The great sage equal to heaven was originally a celestial monkey born from nature. He never cared about the ranks or salaries in heaven. All he wanted was a name and a life of freedom. After being conferred the title of Great Sage equal to heaven, 2 divisions of celestial officials attended to him day and night in the great sage's mansion. He ate 3 meals a day, slept soundly each night, and lived without worries or constraints. In his spare time, he visited friends and wandered through heavenly palaces, making alliances with immortals across the cosmos. When he met the 3 pure ones, he greeted them with respect. When he encountered the 4 emperors, he addressed them as Your Majesty. He treated the 9 luminaries, 5 directions generals, 28 constellations, 4 heavenly kings, and all other celestial beings as brothers, calling each other by name freely. He traveled east one day and west the next, soaring on clouds with no fixed destination, living a life of complete ease. One morning, the Jade Emperor held an imperial court. From the ranks of officials stepped immortal Su Jingyang, who bowed deeply and reported to the Jade Emperor. He said the great sage equal to heaven wandered idly all day, befriending celestial beings regardless of their status. This might lead to trouble in the future. It would be better to assign him an official duty to prevent any unexpected incidents. The Jade Emperor agreed and immediately issued an edict summoning Yukong. The Monkey King rushed over joyfully and asked the Jade Emperor what promotion or reward he had in store. The Jade Emperor replied that since Yukong had nothing to do, he would be entrusted with managing the peach garden and must take good care of it day and night. Yukong was overjoyed, thanked the Jade Emperor, and left the court with a bow. He could not wait to set off and hurried to inspect the peach garden. As soon as he arrived at the garden gate, a god of the land stepped forward to stop him and asked where the great sage was going. Yukong explained that he had been appointed by the Jade Emperor to manage the peach garden and had come to inspect it. The god of the land quickly bowed and summoned the divine warriors of peach cultivation, water transport, peach pruning, and cleaning. They all kowtowed to Yukong and led him into the garden. What greeted Yukong was a celestial spectacle beyond mortal imagination. The peach trees were in full bloom, with blossoms covering every branch and ripe fruits weighing down the boughs. The ripe peaches glowed like blushing faces, while the unripe ones remained green with stems attached. The fruit skins shimmered with a jade-like luster in the sunlight, and the flowers exuded a sweet fragrance that filled the air. Beneath the trees grew rare and exotic flowers that bloomed all year round, and pavilions and halls surrounded by clouds stood on either side. These were no ordinary peach trees from the mortal world. They were personally cultivated by the Queen Mother of the West in the Jade Pool. Yukong wandered through the garden in admiration for a long time before asking the god of the land how many peach trees there were. The god of the land replied that there were 3,600 peach trees in total. The first 1,200 trees had small flowers and fruits that ripened once every 3,000 years. Anyone who ate them would attain immortality, gain enlightenment, and become physically light and healthy. The middle 1,200 trees had lush flowers and sweet fruits that ripened once every 6,000 years. Those who eat them would ascend to the heavens and achieve eternal life. The last 1,200 trees had purple-veined fruits with yellow kernels that ripened once every 9,000 years. Eating these would grant lifespan equal to heaven and earth, as long as the sun and moon. Yukong was ecstatic. He counted the trees, inspected the pavilions, and returned to his mansion. From then on, he visited the peach garden every 3 to 5 days, abandoning his travels and friendships to focus entirely on the celestial peaches. One day, Yukong noticed that most of the peaches on the old trees were fully ripe. His desire to taste them grew intense, but the god of the land, divine warriors, and celestial officials from his mansion followed closely, making it impossible to act. Suddenly, he had an idea. He told them to wait outside the garden while he rested for a moment in the pavilion. The immortals and warriors obeyed and withdrew. Wukong immediately took off his official robes, climbed up the tallest tree, picked a handful of ripe peaches, and ate them greedily while sitting on a branch. After satisfying his hunger, he climbed down, put his robes back on, and called his entourage to return to the mansion. For the next few days, he found ways to sneak back to the garden and eat his fill of peaches whenever he pleased. One day, the Queen Mother of the West decided to hold a grand peach banquet in the Jade Pool. She sent 7 celestial maidens dressed in red, white, green, black, purple, yellow, and blue, each carrying a flower basket, to the peach garden to pick peaches for the feast. The 7 maidens arrived at the garden gate and saw the god of the land, divine warriors, and celestial officials guarding it. They stepped forward and explained their mission. They had been ordered by the Queen Mother to pick peaches for the grand banquet. The god of the land stopped them and said that this year was different. The Jade Emperor had appointed the great sage equal to heaven to manage the garden, and they must inform him before opening the gate. The maidens asked where Wukong was. The god of the land replied that he was resting and sleeping in the pavilion inside the garden. The maidens said they must find him to avoid delaying the banquet. The god of the land led them into the garden, but when they reached the pavilion, they only found Wukong's robes and he was nowhere to be seen. They searched everywhere but failed to find him. In fact, after playing in the garden and eating a few peaches, Wukong had transformed into a 2-inch tall figure and fallen asleep under the thick leaves at the top of a tree. The 7 maidens looked at each other in dismay. They dared not return empty-handed without completing their mission. A celestial official beside them suggested that the great sage was used to wandering and might have left to meet friends. He told the maidens to pick the peaches first while he reported to Wukong later. The maidens agreed and entered the forest to pick peaches. They filled 2 baskets with small peaches from the first row of trees and 3 baskets with medium peaches from the middle row. But when they reached the last row of trees, they found only a few unripe green peaches. All the ripe ones had been eaten by Wukong. They searched carefully and spotted 1 half-ripe peach on a southern branch. The green-robed maiden pulled the branch down, and the red-robed maiden picked the peach. As they lifted the branch back up, they woke Wukong, who was sleeping on it. Wukong immediately resumed his original form, pulled his golden cudgel from his ear, waved it to make it as thick as a bowl and as long as 10 feet, and shouted angrily, He demanded to know who the monsters were that dared to steal his peaches. The 7 maidens fell to their knees in terror and explained that they were not monsters. They were celestial maidens sent by the Queen Mother to pick peaches for the peach banquet. They had looked for Wukong but could not find him, so they had picked the peaches first to avoid delaying the Queen's order. They begged for forgiveness. Wukong's anger faded, and he asked the maidens to stand up. He wanted to know who had been invited to the banquet. The maidens replied that the banquet followed ancient traditions. The guests included the Buddha from the west, Bodhisattvas, Arhats, Guanyin of the southern sea, the sage emperor Chong'an in the east, immortals from the 10 continents and 3 islands, the mysterious spirit of the northern pole, the great yellow emperor of the central pole, and other celestial beings of all ranks. Wukong smiled and asked if he had been invited. The maidens replied that they had not heard his name mentioned. Wukong said he was the great sage equal to heaven and deserved a seat of honor at the banquet. The maidens explained that it was up to the banquet rules and they were not sure. Wukong nodded and told them to wait while he went to check if he was invited. Wukong muttered a spell and shouted stop to the 7 maidens. It was a body-freezing spell that left the maidens standing motionless with wide eyes, unable to move. Wukong then soared on a cloud and flew toward the jade pool. On his way, he encountered a celestial being surrounded by auspicious clouds and glowing mist. The being had a natural and noble demeanor, wearing a rainbow-like robe and carrying a treasure scroll. He was the barefoot immortal, on his way to the peach banquet to celebrate the Queen Mother's birthday. Wukong quickly formed a plan to trick the immortal so he could attend the banquet secretly. He bowed and asked where the immortal was going. The barefoot immortal replied that he had been invited by the Queen Mother to the peach banquet. Wukong lied and said the Jade Emperor had ordered him to invite all guests to perform rituals at the bride hall first before going to the banquet, as his cloud traveling skills were the fastest. The barefoot immortal was an honest and upright person who believed Wukong's words. He wondered why the ritual location had changed from the jade pool to the bride hall, but he still turned around and flew toward the bride hall. Wukong then cast a transformation spell and turned himself into the barefoot immortal. He continued flying to the jade pool, landed gently outside the treasure pavilion, and slipped inside. The hall was filled with a rich fragrance of jade-like incense and glowing mist. The jade platforms were decorated with colorful silk, and the treasure pavilions exuded a serene aura. Phoenixes and cranes danced in the air, and golden flowers and jade petals floated gently. On the tables were exquisite dishes such as dragon liver, phoenix marrow, bear paws, and monkey lips, all rare and delicious celestial delicacies. The hall was perfectly arranged, but no guests had arrived yet. Wukong looked around in amazement and suddenly smelled a strong aroma of wine. He turned to see celestial officials brewing wine, divine warriors handling wine vats, Taoist priests carrying water, and boys tending the fire in the corridor. They had just finished making celestial wine and nectar. Wukong's mouth watered with desire, but he did not want to be seen. He pulled a few hairs from his body, chewed them up, and blew them out while muttering a spell. The hairs transformed into sleeping insects that flew onto the faces of the workers. Immediately, they felt drowsy, lowered their heads, closed their eyes, dropped their tools, and fell into a deep sleep. Wukong seized the opportunity, grabbed plates of delicacies, walked into the corridor, and drank freely from the wine vats and jars. He ate and drank until he was completely drunk. He realized he needed to leave before the guests arrived, or he would be in great trouble. He stumbled out of the jade pool, but his drunkenness made him lose his way. Instead of returning to the great sage's mansion, he flew to the Do Shui Palace, the residence of the Supreme Old Lord in the 33rd heaven. Wukong sobered up slightly when he realized where he was. He thought he had always wanted to visit the Supreme Old Lord but never had the chance. He might as well take a look while he was there. He straightened his robes and walked inside, but the palace was empty. The Supreme Old Lord was giving a lecture on the Tao to the lamp-bearing Buddha on the Zhuling Den platform in the third-floor pavilion, with celestial boys, generals, officials, and attendants standing nearby to listen. Wukong entered the alchemist's room and searched for the Supreme Old Lord, but he was not there. Instead, he saw a burning cauldron and 5 gourds placed beside it. The gourds were filled with refined golden elixirs, the most precious treasure of immortals. Wukong was overjoyed. Since attaining enlightenment, he had understood the unity of inner and outer cultivation and had long desired golden elixirs to enhance his powers. He had never had the chance before, but now fate had brought him this opportunity. While the Supreme Old Lord was away, he emptied all 5 gourds and ate the golden elixirs like roasted soybeans. As the golden elixirs dissolved in his stomach, Wukong sobered up completely. He realized he had caused a disaster far worse than anything before. The Jade Emperor found out, he would surely be killed. He decided to flee back to Flower and Fruit Mountain to be king again. He ran out of the Do Shui Palace, took a different route, and escaped through the western heavenly gate using an invisibility spell. He descended from the clouds and returned to Flower and Fruit Mountain. Below him, he saw flags fluttering and weapons shining. His 4 trusted generals and the kings of 72 caves were practicing martial arts. Wukong shouted loudly that he was back. The monsters dropped their weapons, knelt down, and greeted him eagerly. They complained that he had left them for so long without a word. Wukong laughed and said it had only been half a year for him in heaven. The 4 generals explained that 1 day in heaven was equivalent to 1 year on earth, so it had been over 100 years for them. Wukong told them about his experiences in heaven. He had been appointed the great sage equal to heaven, given a mansion with celestial attendants, and entrusted with managing the peach garden. When the Queen Mother held the peach banquet without inviting him, he had snuck in and eaten the peaches, wine, and delicacies. He had then stumbled into the Supreme Old Lord's palace and eaten the golden elixirs. Fearing punishment from the Jade Emperor, he had fled back to the mountain. The monsters cheered with joy and prepared a feast of fruits and coconut wine to welcome Wukong. Wukong took a sip of the coconut wine but frowned and said it tasted terrible. The 2 generals, Bing and Ba, explained that he was used to celestial wine and delicacies in heaven, so mortal coconut wine seemed inferior. They quoted a saying that nothing tasted better than water from one's hometown. Yukong smiled and said that nothing was more precious than friends from one's hometown. He told them about the celestial nectar he had seen in the jade pool and offered to steal some back so they could all drink it and attain eternal life. The monkeys and monsters were overjoyed. Yukong flew back to the jade pool using his invisibility spell. The workers were still asleep, so he grabbed 4 large jars of celestial wine, carried them under his arms and in his hands, and flew back to Flower and Fruit Mountain. He held a celestial wine party with the monsters, and they all drank happily. Meanwhile, the 7 celestial maidens remained frozen by Yukong's spell for a full day before finally breaking free. They carried their baskets and returned to the Queen Mother to report what had happened. They said Yukong had used magic to trap them, so they had returned late. The Queen Mother asked how many peaches they had picked. The maidens replied that they had only picked 2 baskets of small peaches and 3 baskets of medium peaches. All the large peaches in the last row were gone, presumably eaten by Yukong. When they had tried to find him, he had appeared angrily, asked about the banquet guests, and then frozen them before disappearing. The Queen Mother was furious. She immediately went to the Jade Emperor and reported everything. Before she could finish, the celestial officials in charge of brewing wine arrived to report that someone had disrupted the peach banquet, eaten all the delicacies, and stolen the celestial wine. Shortly after, 4 heavenly masters announced the arrival of the Supreme Old Lord. The Jade Emperor and Queen Mother went out to greet him. The Supreme Old Lord bowed and said he had refined 9 turned golden elixirs for the Jade Emperor's elixir banquet, but they had been stolen. The Jade Emperor was shocked and terrified. Soon after, celestial officials from the great sage's mansion arrived to report that Yukong had abandoned his duties and disappeared since the previous day. The Jade Emperor's suspicions deepened. Just then, the barefoot immortal knelt down and reported his encounter with Yukong. He said Yukong had lied about an order from the Jade Emperor, tricking him into going to the bride hall instead of the banquet. The Jade Emperor was enraged. He ordered the celestial censor to track down Yukong immediately. The celestial censor searched thoroughly and soon returned with a detailed report. He confirmed that Yukong was responsible for disrupting the heavenly court. The Jade Emperor flew into a rage and ordered the 4 heavenly kings, Heavenly King Li Jing, and Prince Neza to lead an army of 100,000 celestial soldiers. They were joined by the 28 constellations, 9 luminaries, 12 Yuan-Chen, 5 directions protectors, 4 value merit gods, and other celestial beings. They deployed 18 layers of heavenly nets to surround Flower and Fruit Mountain and capture Yukong. The celestial army marched out of heaven, filling the sky with rolling yellow wind and thick purple mist that darkened the sun and earth. This was all because the celestial monkey had defied the Jade Emperor, forcing the immortals to descend to the mortal world. The 4 heavenly kings commanded the army, while Heavenly King Li Jing directed operations from the central camp and Prince Neza served as the vanguard. The 9 luminaries, 5 directions protectors, and other celestial warriors lined up in formation, their armor shining like silver and their weapons glinting like ice mountains. They flew through the clouds and mist, landing outside Flower and Fruit Mountain and setting up camp. Heavenly King Li Jing issued an order to surround the mountain tightly with the 18 layers of heavenly nets. He first sent the 9 luminaries to attack. The 9 luminaries led their troops to the cave entrance and saw monkeys playing and jumping around. They shouted loudly, demanding that Liu Kang surrender immediately. They warned that if he refused, all the monsters would be killed. A small monkey rushed into the cave to report the danger. Liu Kang was drinking celestial wine with the 72 cave kings and his 4 generals. When he heard the report, he ignored it and said they should enjoy the wine and not worry about external troubles. Soon, another monkey reported that the 9 luminaries were insulting them at the gate. Liu Kang laughed and said they should focus on the present joy and not care about fame or fortune. Just as he finished speaking, a third monkey rushed in, shouting that the 9 luminaries had broken down the gate and were attacking. Liu Kang flew into a rage. He said the celestial beings were being extremely rude. He had not wanted to argue with them, but now they had dared to attack his home. He ordered the one-horned Ghost King to lead the 72 cave kings into battle, while he followed with his 4 generals. The one-horned Ghost King led the monster army out to fight, but they were quickly surrounded by the 9 luminaries and trapped at the iron plate bridge, unable to break through. At that moment, Liu Kang arrived. He shouted, "Open the way," pulled out his golden cudgel, waved it to make it 10 feet long and as thick as a bow, and charged into the battle. The 9 luminaries dared not stand against him and were quickly defeated. They retreated and formed a formation, scolding Liu Kang for his crimes. They accused him of stealing peaches, wine, and golden elixirs, disrupting the peach banquet, and stealing celestial wine to enjoy with the monsters. They said he was guilty of heinous crimes and ordered him to surrender to avoid further bloodshed. Liu Kang laughed and admitted to all the charges. He asked them what they planned to do about it. The 9 luminaries said they were acting under the Jade Emperor's order to capture him. Liu Kang flew into a rage and shouted that they were no match for him. He swung his golden cudgel and attacked. The 9 luminaries fought back, but Liu Kang defended himself skillfully, leaving them exhausted and defeated. They fled back to the central camp and reported to Heavenly King Li Jing that Liu Kang was too powerful to defeat. Heavenly King Li Jing then ordered the 4 heavenly kings and 28 constellations to join the battle. Liu Kang remained fearless. He ordered the one-horned Ghost King, 72 cave kings, and 4 generals to line up in formation outside the cave. A fierce battle began. The wind howled, and mist swirled as the 2 armies clashed. The celestial army's flags fluttered in the wind, and their weapons glinted brightly. Their armor shone like silver bells reflecting the sun, and their formations were as solid as ice mountains pressing down on the earth. Swords, spears, halberds, and whips filled the air, while bows and arrows flew like lightning. Liu Kang wielded his golden cudgel skillfully, fighting against the celestial warriors with incredible speed and strength. The battle was so intense that birds dared not fly overhead, and tigers and wolves fled the mountains. Sand and stones were blown into the sky, darkening the heavens and earth, while the sound of clashing weapons shook the gods and spirits. The battle began at dawn and lasted until sunset. The one-horned Ghost King and the 72 Kid Kings were all captured by the Celestial Army. Only Wukong's 4 generals and the monkeys managed to escape and hide deep in the Water Curtain Cave. Wukong fought alone against the 4 Heavenly Kings, Heavenly King Li Jing, and Prince Neza in midair. As night fell, Wukong pulled out a handful of hairs, chewed them up, and blew them out while shouting "Transform!" Thousands of copies of Wukong appeared, each wielding a golden cudgel. They attacked together, driving back Prince Neza and defeating the 5 Heavenly Kings. Wukong emerged victorious. He recalled his hairs and flew back to the cave. At the Iron Plate Bridge, his 4 generals and the monkeys knelt down to greet him. They cried bitterly and then laughed joyfully. Wukong asked why they were both crying and laughing. The 4 generals explained that they had cried because the 72 Kid Kings and the one-horned Ghost King had been captured. They laughed because Wukong had returned safely without injury. Wukong comforted them, saying that victory and defeat were common in war. He quoted a saying that to kill 10,000 enemies, one must sacrifice 3,000 of one's own. He added that the captured kings were all beasts like tigers, leopards, and wolves, not his fellow monkeys. He told them not to worry. Although he had driven back the Celestial Army with his transformation spell, they would surely set up camp at the foot of the mountain. He ordered them to strengthen their defenses, eat their fill, rest well, and regain their strength. He promised to use his great powers the next day to capture the celestial generals and avenge the captured kings. The 4 generals and monkeys drank coconut wine and went to sleep peacefully. The 4 heavenly kings ordered the celestial army to retreat and rest. The soldiers reported their achievements. They had captured tigers, leopards, lions, elephants, and other beasts, but not a single monkey. They set up camp again, rewarded the meritorious soldiers, and ordered the troops guarding the heavenly nets to keep watch day and night, preparing for another battle at dawn. Everyone obeyed and stood guard strictly. The celestial monkeys' rebellion had shaken heaven and earth, and the celestial army kept a tight watch day and night. What would happen at dawn? How would the heavenly court deal with Wukong? And what fate awaited Flower and Fruit Mountain? Stay tuned for the next episode.